right, everybody, welcome. Today is Tuesday, January 13th. The time is 4 o'clock p.m. Oh, and I should say in 2026. Happy New Year. We are convened as the Provo City School Board of Education, meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. We'll begin with a roll call. I'm Jennifer Partridge, Board President.
Gina Hales, Board Vice President.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Lisa Boyce, Board Member.
Bailey Lindstrom, Student Board Member.
Rachel Rue, Student Board Member.
Emily Harrison, Board Member.
Meg Van Wagenen, Board Member.
Melanie Hall, Board Member.
Devin Daly, Business Administrator.
Wendy Dow, Superintendent.
All right, thank you, and we want to welcome our other guests and all of our staff who are here to support us and make us look good every time. So, do we have a motion to convene our study session?
I move we convene our study session.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Van Wagenen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Harrison. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are now in our study session, and we are going to begin with our board member training, and I'm going to turn that over to Vice President Gina Hales.
Thank you. So to get this done in the 3 minutes that I have, we'll just quickly go through this. So for the first, from January to August, I believe, we're going to be using this book called the Best Practice Handbook as a kind of a guide. So some of it will come directly from the book, this handbook, and some of it will be things that in our policy or in USBA materials that follows this best practice handbook. So I like how it says best practice handbook for student achievement in public education, because that's why we're here, right? Student achievement. All right, next slide. So what is the best practice handbook? So if you look up, you'll see that this is from the Office of the Legislative Auditor General, and they came and presented when this was like fresh, hot off the press a few months ago at the leadership retreat. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be so boring because it's auditors and they just do numbers. Sorry, Devin. But it was a very interesting thing. So what is the best practice handbook? So go to the next slide. So we're not going to read the whole thing, but it's to assure that the best educated citizenry, which I completely agree with, and then is to help us succeed in a global society, right? There's a focus on student achievement, student academic achievement, and I underlined student learning there as well. And then if you look at the last sentence, our office will consider this handbook a success if its use and implementation lead to markedly improved student academic learning and achievement and better educated children all throughout the state. And then look at the goal there on the right in the yellow. The goal of the legislative auditors is to provide guidance on achieving the highest student learning and academic outcomes for an educated citizenry by providing these LEA best practices. Local Education Agency, for those of you watching who don't know what an LEA is. So go to the next page. So section 1, if you look down, as LEAs adopt these best practices, they will create education systems that are aligned around the clear goal of student learning and academic achievement. And I'm very proud that our recent-ish strategic plan, that's our number one thing, right? It'll give us examples, questions and resources. We actually made it as a positive example in here in the handbook, which is great. But it'll help us identify ways that we can improve and how we can help to create strong and effective educational systems. So go to the next one. So basically, if you look at the thing on the left side, the graph, that's not a graph, the graphic in the middle, you have the board, you have the central office, which is our district office, then you have the schools, right? And then when we all improve, student learning and success comes along with it. So I kind of highlighted and brought out the two things that have to, on that graphic, that have to do with us as a board, because there's lots of things for central office and schools, but as a board, 1.3, each school board should develop the LEA's vision, mission, and goals to focus on student learning and academic achievement. Check mark. We're not check mark, it's completely done, but we did our strategic plan, and that is one of the main things. It's not done because we're always working on it, but I feel like we've set up a good guide map for us, right? 1.6, school boards should regularly review student achievement data, and I feel that we are doing that. I like the NWEA that we have, and then we're always, thanks to our leadership, we're always looking at our student achievement data. Okay, next slide. I really liked this graphic. stay in your lane. And I think we get trained on this all the time as board members. We need to do what board members do and not overstep, right? So if you look at our role, the school board's role is to govern. They should create a vision and mission focused on student learning, set aspirational academic goals for the district, direct policy development, and provide oversight and accountability. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. So our training materials in January through August will be, and I actually brought each one of them here. So we have our own board handbook that is stuck now to the USBA's Guide to Effective School Boards, and then the best practice manual. And if you, as a board member, are interested in the best practice manual, they were going to send them out, but if you are interested, let me know and I'll make sure that we get them. It's a very short read. It's a very easy read. And I think it's very, very important for us to take a look at it and make sure that we are following these best practices. I think it's really important. As a therapist, one of the things that people look at is best practice. Am I following best practice? And I think we need, as board members, also need to be looking at best practice. So January through August, it will be, the backbone is the best practice handbook, and then using these other things to kind of point to where we're doing those things. I think that's the last slide. Is that the last slide? Oh, thank you.
And thank you, Gina, not only for this info today, but Gina is our one who sets up our training schedule, and that's a lot of work to do that. So we appreciate all the time you've put into that. So, all right, next on our agenda is we are going to get updates about TIMView, both construction and our phase 2 contract approval. So I will turn it to Devin to see how you want to approach this together here.
We're going to play tag team. Trent will start going through the presentation, and then we'll talk about the contract, the guaranteed maximum price, and of the new phase. So.
Where do you want me?
All right, so Trent, there's a microphone right up there at the front. If you'll grab that, and you can stand somewhere up there in the front. Thank you.
And oh yeah, we're good. Okay, I'm gonna not stand directly in front of you. How about that? Okay, this is a quick picture that is actually today, that's a layover. We've already kind of taken over the parking lot a little bit. Right in this area is where we are now located. But we'll discuss that a little bit more as we move along. Why don't we go to Josh is over there. There we go. We're going to start in the basement, and we're going to start with the cafeteria first. We'll update you on that, and then we'll work our way towards the next phase. So let's go right on into the basement. Like you already know, most of the work is already done in the basement. There were a couple small water heaters that we had to install. These are right here, and they are completed now. The other main piece of equipment that was actually so large you can't get it in the room. It has to be custom built inside the room. And that is the air handler unit. That has now been completely installed, the unit itself. They've just got to hook the duct up to it, and then that will service the entire cafeteria area. So that's really the last piece of the puzzle mechanically for that entire system. And so those two are both installed. We're moving along quite well down in the basement. Going on upstairs, this is the main level. You are looking, actually looking to the west, but you're inside now the new kitchen area. Off to the right, we call that the UDS wall. That's a wall that kind of services the equipment. The kitchen staff will be familiar with that. The Corey tile that's on the floor is all complete. And you can see here that the wall tile is going on. The wall tile will go for another 3 weeks, probably. And then we will have the walls complete. The last piece of the puzzle is actually dropping the equipment in and putting the ceilings in. So it's not far away inside the actual kitchen. This is a photo of the freezer and cooler that have been completely installed. They're actually up and functioning right now. They've been commissioned. So they're ready to take food if we really wanted to, but we don't. But that's kind of the main kitchen. As you branch out into the cafeteria area, last time we looked, we were framing and basically done framing at that point. Now all the mechanical above the ceiling, the electrical is basically complete. The drywall on the framing is now painted. We're completely painted in that space. And so we are ready to start putting the finishes in. Things that are going on, we'll be wrapping as we continue to finish the tile in the cafeteria area, or the kitchen area. We'll then branch into the cafeteria. If you look on the far side, we have begun right along here. This is the grid for the ceiling. So that area is moving along quite well. Not too far away. On the outside, of course, we've got to get the building closed in. Before, I think about last time we were here, we were kind of in this stage. The windows were missing. There was, drywall, exterior sheeting missing. All that stuff has been installed now. This is a picture, I think, yesterday. The glass is in. It's missing what's called a pressure cap. That will complete that and kind of give it that outside stainless steel look that you're used to seeing. The things that are missing on the outside will be the metal wall panels. That stuff's coming. It's going to be, if we go to the next slide, I think it's about 2 weeks away. Yeah. Something that has turned out really well that we're really pleased with is the decision that we made months ago on what to do with the outside. And if you look at the block, that is the original block that we have stained. And we spent time staining it and playing with it and playing with it and playing with it. And we finally got it to match. This is as good a match as I've ever seen. We are very, very pleased on site with how it looks. It complements the new structure very well. As the metal panels go, this doesn't even have metal panels on it yet. That's just a waterproofing on the outside of it. So we will match this kind of panel. Things will look really good. We'll have a really nice looking building that seems to blend. It all has the same genealogy, if you will. So things are going well on the outside. Next month it'll look a little different, but it'll be hard to tell. That's kind of the cafeteria, to kind of catch you up with that. The contract on the cafeteria is July, and like I said a month or two back, we're still tracking. We think we'll have the last construction activities late March, early April is kind of where we're tracking on that right now. So that's what that looks like. In an effort, as we shift gears, we're going to start talking about this next phase for a few minutes. As we shift gears and look at that, I wanted to kind of give you a brief overview. We have talked with the staff, we've met with MOMI, we've given her detailed information about the transitions in and out, the logistics associated to how the public will function, how the staff will function. Today, I wanted to share milestones at each phase, and to kind of help you walk your way through these, I'll give it two ways. One will be for the public, and kind of the large, broad brush items, and then we're going to talk at each phase about the staff and how that impacts the staff. So that's kind of the format that we're going to use. Phase one, we're calling this phase one again, and we know it's really more like phase 5, but phase one is the new auditorium in the CTE area, band, choral. So that will be the new stuff that's going in. It's on the south end of the property, and what we're going to do, the bus lane that's currently up here through the old parking lot, it will remain, and it'll stay there for this next 2 years. The parent drop-off has already been modified, and now the kids are coming in right here and turning back out right in this location. So that modification should remain through the duration of this phase. The beauty of it, and the reason why we did that, is to keep that modification consistent through the next phase as well. So we're going to try to keep the parent drop-off right here. We've already met with the city. We talked about the queuing and everything associated with that. So that's why we did that, and we made that decision months ago. So that's where that will go. The main pedestrian entrance is now right here, and it ties right into the existing structure. Kids are walking right up that sidewalk and going in. So, and that will remain for the next 2 years. So, so the public understands that. The orange area represents the existing commons area that you're in. And there are two major portions of work that will happen. Both of those are slated for the summer to not impact the school, so we don't affect students or staff in those periods of time. The first one will be the steel upgrade. We will actually upgrade the trusses and the structure around that existing commons area. We'll interrupt that, put it back together, and then also tie cafeteria, and there's a set of stairs that transition off the cafeteria into that commons area. We will put those stairs in this summer. That way, for the entire 2026-2027 year, the real flow and what the building will actually feel like forever will be there. So that's the intent there. In 2027, we go back into that commons area. We demolish the floor, and we put in the piers that will reinforce that space and put the final touches on it. Then we'll put the floor back down and completely finish it at that point. It should never be disturbed again, hopefully for 75 years. So that's kind of the overview for the public in that space. So what does that mean? Let's go to the next slide for the staff. That means in December of 2027, the existing audio equipment in the auditorium needs to be relocated. And we're going to move that equipment as soon as we possibly can in December of 2027. That's in preparation for the new auditorium. We've got to be able to take the equipment out of there, relocate it, and start testing and getting it installed in the auditorium. At that point, at the same time, to minimize massive amounts of moves, we're only going to move the band and choral area into their new space. Okay? The administration will be able to move their area. All of those areas where they're going to move aren't necessarily defined. Okay? But there's space within the building. We've talked about numbers of different areas. Much will depend on what MOMI wants to do. But we're prepared to go into multiple places there, but a large portion of the choral area and CTE area will be available. The only piece that it won't have is just the centerpiece of the auditorium. Everything else will be available to the district at that point. So in January, that's all in preparation for January. We're taking the equipment out in December. In January, we start going after the existing auditorium, and we're looking to demolish and remove it. And that's why that's kind of a pinch point. That's why we're heading that direction. And then in June of 2028, the CTE will be available. They can move in. That is too much to move. If we tried to force that in December, it's too much. The district won't have the bandwidth to move that much stuff. There's too many things that we've got to connect and get back online. So the option was, we'll wait, bring that in the summer when it's a little more comfortable for everyone to make that transition. And then in July 2028, the district will have full occupancy of that entire area. All of phase one will be yours to go. And that is the first phase. Phase two, we jump up on the north end of the campus, and that is the bus drop-off that was here will be eliminated, and they'll move to the opposite side. That will be the eventual resting place permanently. So at that point, they'll go over to this side, and it will feel like they will be there for the next 75 years as we transition to that space. The parent drop-off will remain right here where we've got it, and it'll stay there. That will continue to provide continuity because the main entrance will kind of shift from this location to this location. Well, excuse me, from this location to this location, and you'll be right there. So it shouldn't be too extreme. Everything will remain on the west side, and we plan for it to be that way. And that way, things are rolling right there. That's the impact to the public. Let's go ahead and talk about the staff. In May of 2029, there will be an intermediate move. This is a critical one. This is where we're kind of pinching ourselves a little bit. And the reason for that is right here is the existing CTE and SPED area. The kids that are in that SPED area have to relocate, and they've got to be right here. The two-story new administration area is our pinch point. That is the fastest, hardest thing that we've got to do, and we are boogieing. We have got to knock down the existing auditorium, pull it out, completely fill the hole, and then build that entire structure, which really only gives us about 14 months to build that entire thing, which means we have got to fly. And so there is a chance here that I'm talking about with this, that the people that and the equipment that are in this SPED area, they might have to relocate and leave it in the hallway for a month or two while we finish the classroom area, but then they will transfer in by August of 2029 and get into the space so they can have school. So that's that one. For the most part, that repeats with this next little guy. And then the administration will finally move into their final resting place. They'll make that transition. That is phase 2. From there, things get a lot easier, and the campus will breathe a lot easier. Let's go to phase 3. Phase 3 is the demolition of the CTE, but it's also building the bus route and drop-off area there with the bus. There's a little piece of work where we've got to put the elevator in, a set of stairs, and a bathroom area to connect that hall. That will be the construction portion of it, that's actual building. The rest of it is site work, so it shouldn't be so bad. We are really going to push to get most of that work done in the summer. We'll be focusing on the little building area, and then as soon as school is out, we are going to rip like crazy on that parking lot and try to get it put back together before school starts. That duration will last till December of 2029. And so the administration will occupy, all that kind of stuff takes place. So that's kind of a brief snapshot. There are thousands of activities here that we could talk about, literally thousands. 2 months ago, we rolled out the sheet. Josh and I had it, and we showed you a lot of activities and a lot of our training and thinking on it. This is just a very brief snapshot of what that is. So that's kind of the rundown on that. If we want to go to the next slide, I'll open it up. If you have some questions concerning these things, happy to field any question that you've got. Lisa, go ahead.
Will this presentation be available? Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Will this presentation be available for the public?
Yep.
Okay, great.
I think we're being recorded, right?
We are. I'm just
So-
wondering if these slides can be, because they're not
Devin
here.
has them.
And we'll put 'em-
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's it.
No, go ahead,
Oh,
Lisa. Okay.
go ahead.
I'm just thinking about that 6 months where there's no auditorium, and just thinking if it's from January to June, like, as we're looking ahead, I know that's down the road, just what types of options might be available?
So Momi and I have already talked. There's a few different options. We were looking at possibly some of the BYU areas, Centennial, Sarah. So she actually had some thoughts already when we've been talking about this for a while. Just because I knew that was going to be a big pain point, and something that if we started now, we could actually get those solved, at least the place solved for some of their events. So yes, they do know, and that she's already starting to troubleshoot that.
Well, we are excited to see it all come together and appreciate all your hard work and enthusiasm, and good job on the cafeteria being ahead of schedule. So thank you.
Yeah, it's going to turn over, and things are looking really, really sharp. And we have been so blessed to be able to go into the space, 0 injuries, 0 incidents.
Yet.
Sorry.
Knock on
Oh,
some
there
wood
it is.
right next
I
to
got
you.
some, but we're very grateful for how it's gone, and we anticipate with our planning that we can replicate that and continue to do as well as we can. We're in a big, ugly remodel, but we know what to do. So.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for being here to share with us. So.
Lisa.
Oh, Lisa, go ahead.
I'm just also, this isn't really a question for him as much as just something you know, as we've heard from parents with the new drop-off situation that's challenging with the traffic backup, just something that I know we're aware of, but would love to kind of see what kinds of brainstorming things are possible to make that a little bit easier as we move through this, because it's going to be like that, it sounds like, for quite some time.
Quite some time.
And it's not, you know, it's just a difficult transition for people.
One thing that I failed to mention that I probably should, we met with the city probably 6 months ago, and in discussion with them, a new light will be installed at Quail Valley at that intersection. And their anticipation of that with their traffic study is that will help us. So we'll take any little bit we can help. So.
Yep. And we'll work on timing of the lights in the afternoon, especially in the morning. There are also other things that we're working on as alternate places for parking, but part of that is just still in the works, and so we want to make sure we vet everything before we start saying it out loud in public, just because I want to make sure that what we say we can do is what we're actually going to be able to do. So we'll keep everyone in the loop. I mean, it is something that we're all very mindful of. I know it's going to be a really difficult 4 years, and especially when you start getting into December of 2027 through that summer, it's going to be pretty gnarly. And so we're really trying, I know I used the word gnarly in a public meeting, but that is really what we're looking at. It's going to be a tough couple of years.
But the payoff.
The payoff is going to be really nice. It's going to be a beautiful building, and Trent and his team do an amazing job. So I have no worries at the end. It's going to be beautiful. It's just, you know, those people that are 8th graders right now, they're going to be so excited to move into the new building when they are seniors, which sounds so bizarre. But yeah, that's where we are right now. But we will continue to work on some of the logistics to try to make it easier for families and for kids.
But no plywood hallways to get to class every day.
Eventually, yes. Once we get those temporary walls down from the cafeteria, it'll be really nice for them.
The flow, you'll feel the flow for the first time this August when you come back in, because we'll have the stairs poured in. It'll really feel nice. So as we transition towards this, I apologize.
Sorry, I just want to say, like, from the student perspective, I think a lot of them are okay with the parking. I haven't heard a lot of complaints. Some issues about parents, but I think a lot of them are really excited, and they've learned that plaster temporary wall has a cafeteria behind it, so a lot of students are really excited. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Thank you, Rachel.
As we transition, Melanie, go ahead.
One more question about the cafeteria finishing up, and you're going to be putting the stairwells in. Will we have to ask teachers and everybody to move out of the building like they did this last summer again?
I didn't hear you very well.
Sorry. So this last summer, we had to move everybody out of the building because there was no air conditioning and everything. As we do the new stairway and everything, will people be allowed to stay in the building
Yes.
during the summer?
Yeah.
The main reason that we pushed
we'll kind of
everybody
keep
out.
them, we'll kind of cordon off the commons area, but the rest of the structure. And we're not going to be taking down any of the systems. No system will go offline. Your fire alarm will remain, all the water, all the heat, all the air. We won't be impacting that.
Okay.
So.
And one of the reasons that we pushed everyone out of the building last year was because there was no heat, there was no cool, there was no water. So that was one of the reasons why we had to do that. Next year there won't be any of that.
Can I retract that a little bit? We will have to take the fire alarm down for a week or two. We're going to be in the ceiling, so I'm lying. We will have to get into the fire alarm a little bit, but
You're mistaken.
there's no other
not
systems
lying.
we're going to take down. Yeah, we'll handle that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Appreciate it.
Okay.
You guys are doing great work. All right, Devin, will you talk to us about contract?
Would you bring up, there's a file on board docs that Bonnie added? So this is the document that shows our guaranteed maximum price. So it is definitely higher than what we were hoping for at the beginning, but lower than what it could have been. So we're still working through. If you'll notice, down at the bottom are some of those areas that we're still working on value engineering and some of the things that we really feel are things that we can save. So right now, those amounts are included in the guaranteed maximum price, but what I've asked them to do is to leave that, and then as we move things, as we take things off, we'll just increase the owner contingency, because right now we only have 1.3 million in contingency. I feel lots more comfortable as it gets closer to 2 million, but it will not increase that guaranteed maximum price. So this is the total cost for the rest of the build. So 68.
I was going to say, can you point out the exact lines you're
This
looking at
is
here?
not the right one. I left that. It's the second one. Sorry. There is $46,000 additional. So really the only difference is that alternate number 2, the water metering. This is what happens when I run back and forth. I pick up the wrong piece of paper. That 46,000 is added actually into the guaranteed maximum price. So it's 68,588. And that water meter is what will serve the auditorium CTE area. And we're pretty sure the city is going to require it. So to have that new water meter, that's what that cost is. So the actual total guaranteed price, which I will put on the business meeting to vote for, is 68,588 and some change. So okay, I'm sure there's lots of questions about how we're going to do this. This will require us right now with the cafeteria. That puts us at just over 82 for the build, plus we have the architect. So we're right around 85. We received 75 million in the bond. It was a $70 million bond, and we got some really good rates, so we were able to capture some of that premium, which helped cover the rest of that. The rest of that would either come out of fund balance, or there are some other ideas that I've been kind of thinking of as I'm going through it. We do have the fund balance in our capital fund. We also have some building reserve fund that is set aside for the building of a school. We also will receive some interest on this, and if we spend it within the 48 months with a little bit of leeway, we actually can, if we make too much interest, we won't have to deal with arbitrage. Arbitrage is if you make more interest than what you're paying, because we're government bonds, we actually have to pay that back to the IRS, which is what we've done, which was what we have to do with what the bonds that we got for Shoreline and Wasatch, because we weren't quite fast enough spending it because of some of those delays at the beginning with swamplands and water rights and all of those things that kind of delayed some of the project. So those are some of the options. Again, we also are working on the the Dixon site to build the new elementary school. And that bond was written for Timpview and that elementary school. So we can we can use the bonds for those two buildings. And then in 3 years, as we are kind of getting done with the elementary school and going outside of the, or finishing up with Timpview, we can also do an additional bond to cover the rest and the elementary school, or see where we are, because we always have some savings in our capital fund, because we're really trying to be mindful of not having to ask the public regularly for any additional bonds. And we talked about issuing a bond for the new elementary school. I would just like to wait as long as possible till we do that.
What questions do people have about this contract? Okay, Wendy.
How much money are we setting aside for furniture?
So generally, this area will have quite a bit of furniture because we have CTE, but a lot of the CTE equipment can be moved. We also have some money set aside in CTE for some of that furniture. Right now, I was planning on about 1.5 million. Yes.
Additional to.
Additional to,
85.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm really supportive of using building reserve funds.
Yep.
And funds
And that
we
is
already
that's
have.
my first.
Yeah.
My last resort will be asking the public for more. We are going to do as much as we can with the funds that we have, and not leave us with no money to deal with any kind of emergencies. So, yes.
Devin, could you speak to kind of the brief overview of how we got to this number and how it's more than we wanted? What have we done to try to save costs? Especially, I know there's some public perception that when people are building schools, they just go for this extravagant school and aren't trying to save money. So what have we done to try to bring this cost down?
I'm going to defer a little bit to Mark and Trent. They've been working their tails off over Christmas and the beginning of the year to work with our vendors or with our subs to bring costs down. Part of that is with the helical piers. So some of the helical piers under the auditorium, they were not recommending to put them under the slab on the auditorium, but they were in the cost. They're just putting them on the walls, which is where they're recommended to be. And I'm going to let Mark answer the rest.
Yeah. So one thing to keep in mind, right now, building construction costs for schools range anywhere from $420 to $500 a square foot. We're sitting at $420. So this is 160,000 square feet of building that we're building. Can you hear me now? So that we actually have a really good price for what we've been seeing in construction right now. A number of the VE items that we've been working through, Devin talked about the helical piers. As we went back through and reviewed bids and looked through the documents again and reached out to the subcontractors that we received bids from, we always are looking for areas that we can save money. One of them is in helical piers. So you can see there's close to, I want to say it was 363,000. Now this does not affect the integrity of the building at all. This was actually something that the structural engineer had put in the plans kind of last minute that no one had seen. So as we received bids, we looked at it and says, okay, this is a little bit high. Where can we save in this? And so there's a number of categories that as we worked through this process on a project like this, it takes 2 to 3 weeks just to comb through and make sure we have complete coverage, that we've unturned every stone. We spent 2 weeks just meeting with subcontractors to understand exactly what they have in the bid and make sure they have everything covered, but yet that they have the value engineering, that they could see a better way of doing things that does not affect the integrity of the building, but we can save money. One of them that we saw was the foam that's going underneath the not bleachers, but in the auditorium. One of them brought up, says, hey, if you go to this foam, maybe we can save $100,000 just by changing the foam. So we've been looking at various ways of doing this. But as far as your cost per square foot, we feel really good about where this is at. Cost per square foot, it's great to be at this point. We've had some other projects across the state coming in at the 450. That would put you at $75 million. So to come and see and be where we're at, I feel really good about this. We are continuing to look through and find ways to save as well. And we do this through the whole construction process. I believe on Shoreline, we found multiple areas that we could save money. And that goes directly back to you. And with the relationship that we have with our subcontractors, it's not pennies on the dollars, it's dollars on the dollars that we get back from them. Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the helical piers, just to clarify for the public. They were needed structurally. Correct. Under a lot of the work we've done, and I know when we found some spaces under the auditorium, there were some sinkhole spaces, correct? And so help me just be clear with me, like, because I don't really understand a lot about construction, where we do and don't need them and why.
So this $363,000 would be under the floor itself. The rest of the school has all of the helical piers underneath the footings of foundation. So as we looked at the soils report, talked to the soils engineer and the structural engineer, and combed through everything, we don't need them underneath the floor.
Still have them under the floor.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the only place in the entire project. That's the only place in the entire project where the engineer arbitrarily put them under the floor.
Yes.
And so we captured that and said, hey, love the idea, but not so sure that it's necessary. And so that's why we have that number.
And the structural engineer has a clear understanding of what we're looking at as well, and he agrees we're fine to do this. Yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, just a comment. Oh, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay.
And
I should say, kind of on the same topic, we've had a school or two in the past where, looking back, it got value engineered too much, and we had to replace finishes too soon, or it just didn't hold up well. Are we on that
No.
line at all? No.
We are not.
Okay.
Anything that we've looked at will not affect the longevity or integrity of the building. And we didn't change the square footage either.
great.
It's
And
the
I
same square footage.
I feel like during our meetings, we did a lot of that. We did a lot of the trying to save money, trying to save space, and I think we all did a really good job making sure that we had what was necessary and not too much. And so when you're looking at the cost, there was, like, for example, our team was really wanting a specific vendor for one of the items. Well, that specific vendor was $2.5 million more than the next vendor down. So those are some of the things that they've been working on, is getting some of those, picking the right vendor or subcontractor. Sorry, so we can make sure that we're getting a really good build, but we're not overspending on some of those subs that could be more. So that's what they've been spending the last 4 to 5 weeks on it. Once they got those bids, was to really start going through each individual sub and making sure they had the right one.
Yeah, the value engineering process didn't start at bid. It started a year ago. And so as we were looking at it, it wasn't the low-hanging fruit for value engineering was not in finishes. It wasn't in the look or appearance or square footage of the building. We felt very confident in our budgets that we could keep the square footage and still get as tight a bid as we could.
Some of our value engineering was like the full fly to a 3/4 fly. And I know a lot of the public, for the auditorium, sorry, that was one of the ways that we were able to cut $2 or $3 million off the project from the very beginning, as we're value engineering. And I know that's a pain point for especially the theater group, but it is also fairly standard across the state. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing the best thing that we could do for the community, making sure we weren't overspending.
All right, do we have any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, so tonight in our business meeting, we will vote on approval of this contract. And then once it's approved, then they can move forward, get started.
They can start ordering.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 6, our boundary adjustment timeline discussion. I'll turn that over to Wendy.
Theoretically, I can't. There we go. Oh, that's way better. Okay, we just wanted to update you on this timeline for our boundary adjustments and keep you in the loop as to what's going on as we were talking about adjusting the one side of Carterville Road for Westridge Elementary to move that into the Shoreline Provo feeder system, and then to also take a look at a little triangle of space over that is currently in Edgemont's boundaries and looking at whether or not we want to put that towards Rock Canyon instead. Because we were coming back off of the break and we wanted to make sure that we were meeting all of the requirements to notice the public hearing, we decided we wanted to bump the public hearing to the later meeting in February, just to ensure that we're not getting up against those deadlines too much. And then the vote wouldn't happen until March 10th. We have finalized the information meetings at the different elementary schools that you'll see. So we will have an information meeting at Westridge Elementary on Tuesday, February 3rd at 6:00 p.m. And then we'll do one at Edgemont Elementary at 7:00 p.m. that same evening, recognizing that Westridge Elementary boundary shift is only affecting, I believe it's 8 or 9 homes. So there probably won't be a lot of people that show up to that. So we'll split our team up and we can have board members at both Westridge and Edgemont. We just probably need to have one board member at each. And then Wednesday, February 4th at 6 p.m., we'll do another one at Rock Canyon to just really highlight what it is that we're doing and then allow them to ask any questions. Then they can come to the public hearing if they still want to give formal input. And then the vote would not take place until March 10th. If you even choose to go that direction, you may choose not, you may decide not to. There was one other thing I was going to say about that. Oh, the mailers, Caleb just finished the mailers for the residents that are in these particular areas. It has the information on the front with the meeting times, as well as the maps that Devin has provided in the past will be on the backside. It will be in English and Spanish. He's working on the Spanish part, so we'll have that out by the end of this week, and it'll be sent to those homes that are being affected. What questions do you have for me?
Where can we see the meeting times?
It is on this document. So if you scroll to the second page, it is bullet number 2 on that second page, and it says information meetings will be held on, and I'll make sure that Bonnie sends a calendar invite for all of those. We don't want to have more than 3 board members at any of them, so maybe Jennifer and Gina can help coordinate who could be there to help support with that, and I'll make sure my team is there as well, and Devin and I will be there. So other questions? I think I did that in 3 minutes.
I guess I do have one question for the board. So the third bullet point on that second page says to hold the public hearing during our February 24th board meeting, or the board could choose to have it as its own thing on another night. Is everyone okay to have it on the 24th, or do you feel strongly about having it on a different night?
That's a great question.
I feel fine doing it on the 24th with our meeting.
But is that a regular board meeting day?
Is that
what you mean?
On boundaries, it's okay to do it the same. It's only when you're dealing with taxation issues that you can't do it the same night.
Okay.
All right, sounds like we're good to keep it on the 24th then? Okay, we will plan on that then. So, all right, no other questions. We'll move on to item number 7, our attendance data update.
Bonnie, or whoever, can I just take over the screen? It'll probably be easier for me. Thank you. is the best. Okay, here we go. Oh, I don't even have to enter a code because the screen is so familiar with me. Okay, so I'm kind of excited to share this data. And there's kind of like some moments where you're going to be like, oh, this is awesome, and then others where you're going to be terrified. So I love the roller coaster we're about to embark on. So we have pulled comparative data from 2024 to 2025 from quarter one, and compared it from last school year to this school year, and it is only high school. We are going to pull elementary data as well, and I'll talk more about that in the next steps a little bit later. So I want you to see this. I think this is awesome. Okay, so remember that chronic absenteeism is defined as a student who misses more than 10% of the school days. Note that they don't take into account whether or not the absence is excused. They don't care. And also, you get pushed into this chronic absenteeism for school excused absences as well, because the research shows that any absence from school affects the learning of the student, and it affects their likelihood to drop out because they're missing instruction. So the the blue was last year, chronic absenteeism rates, and the orange is this year. So, and we did it by class period in core classes because we felt like that's where we see a lot of issues with grades and those kinds of things. Math, knocking it out of the park. Nobody wants to miss math at Provo High or Timpview High or Independence High. Everybody's like, gotta go to math. So what?
In ninth grade.
In ninth grade. Oh yes, we gotta wait till we get to the rest of this data, right? And then you notice Timpview, and I think this generates some really interesting questions. So one is at Timpview, in their ninth grade cohort, they have a group of students who have been identified as, we want to make sure that they have the right support, and they're put in this cohort with these 4 core teachers together. I think you're seeing the effects of that in terms of the chronic absenteeism rate being lower as a result that those kids are kind of traveling as a cohort. So, good news is that maybe our attendance efforts are slightly helping with ninth grade. That makes me feel a little bit better that all of this effort, the Shauna and our principals, I mean, if you've watched Cami Alvarez's videos and all of the things that have taken place, it's a lot of work that's gone into this. 10th grade, you will also notice at Provo, and we did pull social studies in 10th grade because it was easier to identify the 10th grade students for social studies. I don't know why he didn't pull it for 9th grade. It must have been because he felt like there were different, because of AP geography and regular geography. I don't know. But notice science knocking it out of the park. Something happened there at Provo High in science, in math, and in ELA. 10th grade, amazeballs. I don't know what's going on.
And I asked a question. When I was looking at this earlier, are Provo and Independence switched? Because it looks like no, it isn't. Okay.
Nope, not switched. And at least that's I don't think so. Just because you're looking at the percentages?
The percentages go better with independence, so I just want to make sure.
I don't know. I'll ask that question, but I don't think so, just because I'll double check. I would have no way of knowing until he goes back and looks at the actual numbers. When I look at independence, yeah, and Provo has really high, but I will say this. One of the things that Provo High talked about last year was that they had a really high rate of absenteeism, and it was a struggle. They just had kids that were wandering the halls, and that was an issue. So I don't know. Daryl, do you have anything you want to add to that? I don't know where he went. Did he walk outside? Do you think it's switched? Okay. Well, that'll be a question that we'll ask. Timpview, kind of the same for 10th grade. So not a lot of movement at Timpview, so that generates some interesting questions. 11th grade is really fascinating. So 11th grade, our chronic absenteeism rate actually at Provo goes up. At Timpview, depends on the subject. And at Independence, it actually went down. And Independence has done I think, a pretty good job of trying to work on their chronic absenteeism. And then when you look at 12th grade, it's just disastrous. So notice that our numbers along the scale are going up to 70%. Like we have in science at Provo High, we have over 70% of our students that are chronically absent in 12th grade. Now, I want to provide some context for some things. One is in 11th and 12th grade, students get a lot more involved in extracurricular activities, and so they can start falling into these chronic absenteeism pieces. Like if I'm on the soccer team and I've got a game on Tuesday and Thursday and I get checked out of fourth period on both of those days early, and it happens to be math, and that happens 2 different weeks, I am now chronically absent, even though those have been school excused absences. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing I would like to keep in mind is when you're looking at like science, for example, not very many 12th graders actually take science because it's not required. So you're getting 2 groups of kids that are in science as a 12th grader. You're getting your really super motivated students that are in 12th grade as science, but you're also getting students where they've had to retake a science, or this is to avoid credit recovery, or they didn't take it in 9th grade, or that type of thing. So there's lots of different factors that we could start to drill down and start looking at individual students to answer further questions with this. So it does just generate some more questions, obviously, as a result. Then I had Nate pull the impact of student attendance on a student's GPA. So what he did was he went through each grade level. So you can see you have 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and he took their GPA in that course. So basically their grade and correlated it to a GPA. And so with math, the correlation is a 0.547. You know, correlations go from a -1 to a 1. So the closer you are to 1, the higher the correlation there is. So the higher the closer that number is to 1, the more likely it is that attendance is tied to a better grade. So if they're attending, they tend to be earning a higher grade as a result of that. What is really fascinating is the second graph, which shows the percent of students with failing GPAs. That means they earned an F in that class, and they are chronically absent. So if I look at a 9th grader who's in math, if I earned an F, 75% of the math students that earned an F in 9th grade missed more than 10% of their class periods for that. Notice 12th grade math, 84%. ELA, 88%. So those are just some interesting things. So when he went through and analyzed that, this is the statement at the top, is that attendance explains about 25% of the variance in a student's GPA. So it doesn't completely dictate how a student is going to do, as you will have many individuals tell you. My child wouldn't have had to attend a single day because all they had to do was make up everything on Canvas, and there was nothing that couldn't have been made up, and there was no reason for them to be in school. That isn't typical. So what is typical is that about 25% of what's governing that student's grade in a particular class can be tied to attendance. So those students that are attending more frequently are generally going to do better in that class. And obviously, we do have those variants that are in place there. So I do think attendance matters when we make it matter. I'm really curious to see what happens with our 9th grade cohort as they go through. Like, do they wake up and figure out that they don't have to go to school like all our 11th and 12th graders have figured out? I don't know. I don't know what's happening there. But our 11th, and I did state this before, 11th and 12th graders are more involved in extracurricular activities. They've kind of figured out school. Right, Bailey and Rachel, you know what classes you can miss, and it's not a big deal. And you're like, oh, that's going to be easy. I can miss this 90-minute class, and I can make it up in 15 minutes. Like, we're all smart. Like, we can figure this out. I do want to emphasize that when we shared this data with our parent advisory committee, it was really interesting to hear parents say that they appreciated the emphasis on attendance and didn't feel like that we should back off on it. One mom shared, and granted, anecdotal story, one parent said, I used to check my kid out of school sometimes an hour, 30 minutes before the end of school because I didn't feel like it was a big deal. But then when I started hearing that they don't get their perfect attendance awards if they're not showing up by 9 o'clock or these kinds of things, then my daughter was freaking out about not being part of that. And so now I just schedule everything outside of school hours. And I was like, winning? That's amazing. I'm sure the Provo doctors are not happy about that because everybody wants an appointment outside of school. But I do think this data needs to be shared with our parents so that they can start to see that. So we do want to pull some comparative data with our elementary schools, and then as we share the MOY stands for middle of year data, particularly with Acadians, as students are acquiring reading skills, I'd really like to show if there's a difference between students who are not having the growth rates that they need to and what correlation there is with their attendance, and then start sharing that with parents. Because until I can get parents to understand the importance of their kids coming to school, that's going to be really key in elementary. And what we see happening is that a student's attendance patterns are determined by the time they're in 4th grade. So if they have learned that by 4th grade, attendance doesn't really matter and they have that attitude, they will have that attitude throughout their entire educational career. Whereas if you have the parent that is like, no, you don't miss school, or like my mom was like, you do not miss school, you don't get to watch TV, you do not get to go outside. Like, you know, I was a Gen Xer though, so that was different. As Gina, we've had these conversations about this. So I do think that sharing the data becomes really important. Questions that you have?
Go ahead, Rachel, and then Terry.
All right. I believe, I don't know if this is right, but I think last year I learned about how there was like a similar cohort at Timview, and they would have the students be like escorted by trackers or teachers to their core classes, and then they were allowed to go home on an earlier bus. Is that still ongoing?
I don't think she does that anymore. Daryl, do you know that? Does she still allow them to go home on an earlier bus because they're only coming for core classes? I don't think that cohort still exists. They have electives now.
They have electives now, but it's still like they have trackers or more support in that
There's a lot more support, yes.
Okay. And is that still, has that been ongoing for some time now, or?
I feel like this is the 2nd year, 3rd year.
9th grade academy.
Yes.
9th grade academy's been going on for at least 3 years.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it'd be good to see progressive data on
those
that.
kiddos.
Over time. And I do agree, like 11th and 12th graders have it figured out by then, and a lot of them are like, I don't need these credits anymore, or they take time off and decide to leave. And I also believe that lunch schedules can sometimes influence that as well.
I agree.
All right, Terry?
I'm just surprised at how much chronic absenteeism is already happening during the 1st quarter. And I didn't get senioritis till the end of the year. So do we know why these kids are, if it's not an excused and not a school, do we know why they're missing?
We can drill down and find that information out and start. And so some additional steps could be, how many of these are excused absences? Which ones are school excused? I think that would be a good number to pull that out. I don't necessarily think that just because a parent is excusing it that it's necessarily more legitimate in that way. I do think there is just a different attitude about attendance in school than like when you and I were in school. I think COVID helped with that. I think we have a lot of parents that work from home. And so it's sort of like, I do this when, I do, like my daughter-in-law, she's like, I do my job from home when I feel like doing my job from home. I work 2 hours here, then I take a half hour off, and then I do another 2 hours, and that just sounds great. And our high school students are going to start figuring out that when you go to college, you don't actually spend that much time in class. Like our high school students spend an inordinate amount of time in seated classes in comparison to a student who's taking 12 or 15 credit hours. That's all you're spending in class a week. That's a significantly less amount because there is the assumption that you're spending, for every hour you're in class, you're spending 2 to 3 hours on your own. So, go ahead, Lisa.
I'm just curious to know, like, kind of the plan of getting this information to parents. That's my first question. And my second one is just to say, When we passed our attendance policy, there was a big discussion. I just want to remind the public about regarding, all of the different levers that we do at least know go into attendance, and that our teachers are working hard to make sure that they're utilizing class time bell to bell in ways that are impactful. Like every person involved in this conversation is really trying to make this push worth everyone's while, right? And so,
Agreed.
Sometimes I'll hear from parents like, well, my kid goes to school and then they just watch movies all day, but I really believe our teachers are making an effort to be really mindful of how they use their time, and this is a group collaborative thing to improve, and so parents, we want parents on board, we want students on board, we've got teachers on board and admin, but I'd love to hear how we can help get this data out to parents.
I think there's a variety of ways, but I'll work with the communications team. We've talked about doing like little, just even snippets of just videos and sharing some of these screenshots with parents. I'd really like to share it with principals, especially as we get data with elementary students and as they're doing parent nights, to show this is impacting your child's reading and their math. I think that would be very impactful. So yes, we can do talking points. Yeah, we can. I think those are great suggestions. And I just think that we need to also recognize that our, like you said, our parent, just because a student isn't coming to school, we want to be really careful too, not to say that the parent isn't caring. There are a lot of factors that are going into it, and that's why we have such an intensive process to help families kind of work through that and figure out how we can support them better. And for teachers, when I hear individuals say, well, our teachers are not making the classes engaging enough, or they're not doing these things. If I'm teaching 200 students and I have 25% of them that are gone, that's a lot of kids that I'm now going to have to manage to make up different work, whether it's quizzes or it's going to be some kind of awesome activity. So to not lose my mind as a teacher, I'm going to try to replicate something on Canvas that they can do for those points to help with their grade. And I think we have to answer that question more readily to support our teachers in that process, because what we're asking them to do to just be like, well, have this really rich experience and then, yeah, figure out a way to let every single kid make that up somehow. That's also not reasonable, because those teachers are required, if the student has an excused absence, to allow them to make up those points. How do you manage that? That is a lot on a teacher. So I do want us to make sure that we're giving them grace as well.
Go ahead, Meg.
Yeah, just like thinking about this, and along with what you're saying, Wendy, the nuance of, if I'm thinking about those students who have a failing grade and how it's linked to their absenteeism, I hope that we also are mindful of what, like a chicken and egg situation, right? Like students who maybe are like, I can't do school, I don't want to go because it's really hard to feel like I am just behind and then get further and further behind, right? Which I think we're all aware of, but I think that's part of this conversation too, of those pieces, looking at the different challenges students have, right? And
I think one of the things that actually hurts us quite a bit in high school, and Daryl was actually the one that kind of brought this up to me, was our quarters are very long in high school. So once you start falling behind, you're just gonna give up and peace out. And the problem is then now I'm in the habit of not going. So then, okay, everyone's like, oh, well, just start over next quarter. Well, how do I do that when it's a quarter of math that I've missed or a quarter of chemistry that I've missed? I'm still going to be lost. So then I'm going to show up first day, second quarter, and then I'm still completely lost. And so now I'm going to stop not attending again. So what I think we really need to be creative about, for that student that starts to fall behind, is there a way where we can intervene and pull them and get them caught up quickly and push them back into that system? We've not mastered that yet. I think that's where Independence has a good handle on things, because they have hexes, so their quarters are much shorter. We need to be giving our high school some flexibility on what does that look like. So, other questions? I talked way too long about this.
Okay. Great update. Look forward to seeing the elementary numbers come in too. All right.
Our next item is our board meeting calendar for 2026. So every year, we set the dates at the beginning of the year and we approve the calendar as a board. In addition to each individual meeting, will get notice to when it gets closer to that meeting. But you've all had the chance to look over the schedule. Most of it is our usual second and fourth Tuesdays of each month, except for our all-day meetings. And in April, because of spring break, we are just going to have one business meeting on the 21st. Well, study session with it too. And then we have 2 meetings scheduled with the city council during the year, one in April and one in October.
There's a date missing. We need to add an April 28th board meeting for our teacher recognition night.
Yes. Okay. So,
sorry, I didn't catch that till now.
We will add in April 28th. So when we approve it tonight, we will say with the changes discussed in study session, that will include the April 28th. Anybody else see anything in the calendar that we need to adjust? Okay. Easy enough. Thank you. We will move on to item number 9, which is also logistical. We're talking about our assignments for graduation speakers. And our committee assignments. So normally on the even years when we haven't just had an election with possible new board members and stuff, we usually keep our committee assignments generally the same, but it is a time if we need to adjust anything. So let's start with that. And I sent you guys an email with a quick link to see our committee assignments, if that's helpful for you. So. Melanie, you had mentioned there might be a possible new assignment. What do you know about that?
It's on the, so UCAS is looking for a board member to sit on there and be a voting member for that, and also to be a citizen from the area. It's the 3rd Tuesdays of every month. So
at like lunchtime, evening time, do we know?
Let me double check. It's the 3rd Tuesday at 4 p.m.
Okay. So, is there anyone that is interested at that?
I can do it, and I have probably the lightest load, so I feel like I should.
Use the mic, please.
Sorry. I can do it. I think I finished teaching at 3:30, so I feel like if someone else wants to, great, but I do have fewer committee assignments.
What days are we doing policy committee?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't do it.
I can do it.
Tuesdays, that's the hard part.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not on policy anymore, I don't think, right?
Yeah, I'm taking policy back, yeah.
So I can pick this one up.
You want to take that one? I'll get you the information from Julie King.
Okay. Awesome. Was there any other adjusting anybody needs? And while you're thinking about that, we do need to select our board member who will be our delegate at the USBA Delegate Assembly in June. It is Saturday, I believe that's the 7th, that first Saturday of June. The 6th is the Saturday. Okay, June 6th, thank you.
Do that.
Okay. Was there anyone else that wants to fight Lisa for it? Okay, then Lisa will do that.
Do we need a backup?
Yes.
Terry, you had mentioned maybe doing.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to be the alternate?
Either way, it's up to you.
I don't care.
We'll cover it. It's the frisbee. I missed it last year.
Oh,
I'm so sad.
the frisbee, yeah.
The frisbee. It's very exciting. It's very exciting.
Okay. Terry's the alternate. All right. Okay, graduation assignments. And usually we say if you have a graduate yourself this year and you want to speak at that, then it's yours. So Melanie, you do have a graduate. You want Timothy this year?
Yes, please.
Okay. Anybody have a Provo High graduate?
Next year.
Next year? Okay. Who would like to speak at Provo High?
We promise that we won't let anybody interrupt the board members.
Oh, that was so bad.
That has happened 2 years in a row. That will not happen again. As God is my witness, I will go down and tell them to sit back down. You all know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. It's horrible. Poor Emily.
You were a star.
Emily, would you like to speak it? Oh no, you did it this year. Sorry, you just did it. We should change it up. Who didn't do it this last year? I think I'm one who didn't, so I need one turn this time.
You did.
I didn't. Yeah, I can do
Okay.
Provo High again.
Okay.
Unless someone else, I guess no one else wanted to. I will do it.
I'm waiting for the next year because I'll have a
Okay.
graduate.
Okay. Then we've got Independence, which is the night after Provo High, right? Oh, I'm a week ahead. It's on the calendar we just looked at. Independence is Thursday the 21st. I can do that one. Okay. And then Adult Ed will also be sometime that week usually. Gina, okay. And then fall graduation, I don't remember. Do we have a date for fall graduation? Was that on our list?
First Wednesday in October, I feel like.
Daryl, do you know if we have a date yet for that?
Fall graduation.
It's the first.
Wednesday in October. Am I right in that? Okay.
First Wednesday of October.
October 7th. Sweet.
Do we need to add that to the calendar that we just are about to approve? Maybe it's there and I missed it. Okay, it's not there. Okay. So Adult Ed, fall graduation. Okay. Who would like a turn?
Did we get everyone who did not speak last year?
Yes, that's Terry.
I maybe didn't. I don't know if I don't think I did. I can do it.
Meg, okay.
Do you want a speaker for East Bay Post High? I don't know when that graduation will be, but I think it would be awesome.
Oh yeah, some of us went this last year and you did speak, didn't you?
Morning of the last day of school.
They did ask me, I attended and they asked me to say a few words, so I did, but it might be good to just put it on the agenda.
I think so.
Okay, that
Not the
leaves
agenda, though.
Lisa or Melanie.
I'm speaking next.
Oh, sorry, I can't read. Okay.
Emily, do you want to? Are you working one day?
Do it
In the morning?
It's in the morning on a Friday.
Yeah, it's
On a
is it
Friday?
the 22nd?
Yes.
If it's on a Friday, yes.
Okay.
May 22nd.
Or we can switch and give you a different one.
I'd rather speak at East Bay Post High myself.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I've got Melanie on Timpview, Terry on Provo High, I'm on Independence, Gina for Adult Ed, Meg for the fall graduation, and Emily for the East Bay Post High. Okay. Go team.
Do we know when adult ed graduation? May 13th? Okay.
Do we want to add that to our calendar too? Okay, let's add that. Okay. Item number 11, we are going to have the best conversation of the night, I'm sure. The moment we've all been waiting for.
No, we have to do 10.
Oh, I'm sorry, skipped. Well, it's still going to be a really good conversation, John. E-school. E-school's going to be great. Okay, we're going to turn it over to John Anderson and to talk about his district proposal for e-school.
So we need to talk about evolution of some things, and to do that, we'll take us to the Magic Kingdom, and we'll talk about evolution of some things there. Opening in July of 1955, it was a pay-per-ride event. Some representations of those tickets. Last year was fun for me because I turned 55 and I was born in 70, and Disneyland, of course, turned 70, having been born in 55. So it was a great year. That evolution changed, and they introduced tiered tickets because some rides drew more attention than others, and they needed to manage the flow. So in 1959, they introduced an E tier on top of the other tiers, A through C. In 71, Six Flags opened and offered unlimited ride access. That changed the whole dynamic. And so in the late 70s, Disneyland began introducing passports to let you ride everything. And in 82, tickets were completely replaced just with passports. In 99, this is kind of the culmination of the evolution process. The Fast Pass was introduced. And the Fast Pass was a phenomenal introduction that really allowed some fun access to things in the park if you're willing to run around and get to places really quickly, which we did. We loved that. In 2014, it evolved to Fast Pass Plus, which was, it was okay. Not as good as regular Fast Pass. The upside, actually for the first 2 years it was, because not everybody was using the app yet. And so early on, those of us who adopted the app early really benefited from Fast Pass Plus until everybody else started using the app. Genie Plus was a bomb. It was introduced in 21, did not do very well. It's evolved now to Lightning Lane, which has some returns of hope, but there's an upside to that, is it's tiered, and it's weirdly tiered. For $400, you can get the highest tier, per ticket, mind you, on top of the ticket you've already paid for. Or you can do a per ride event for Cars or Rise of the Resistance, and those vary depending on flow of the day, between 22 and 28 per ticket on top of that. So the evolution has gone from a ticket for each ride to an unlimited passport to a Fast Pass, which was really fun back in the day, to a situation today that's evolving and leaves me a little hopeful that it gets better.
Basically, you're paying for every ride.
Yeah, basically. E-school is kind of the same. It's evolved over the years. Our e-school, in its earliest days, served a need that didn't really exist, and we served thousands of students across the state. It was unique. We were doing something very different. We were serving a need that existed that wasn't being met, and it literally was thousands of students. We had multiple teachers, full-time teachers, SPED teachers dedicated to our e-school program, and counselors that were dedicated to the students involved in e-school. Our current version is kind of like Lightning Lane. When I took the job last year, I began looking into some things and looking at the numbers of students that were participating in our e-school versus something I wasn't fully familiar with coming out of a middle school assignment, which was SOEP. It's been around for a few years from the state, and many of our students were using SOEP, but much of our use of e-school had not only declined, but it shifted, and students were using SOEP more. As of fall 25, when I was putting some of this data together, we had 30 K through 6 students in our e-school, 1.5 full-time elementary teachers, and there's the costs involved there for our elementary program. 30 students was about $5,100 per student in that elementary program. And those numbers in elementary actually vary quite a bit. On a secondary level, 180 Provo High students last year participated in 381 enrollments. So a course, a quarter credit course that they would have enrolled for and signed up for. Big discrepancy in the Timpview students, with 429 of them having enrolled in 1,052 enrollments. Teacher number varies, it's by need. The teachers get paid $500 per course and then $20 per kid for the completion of the course. So they do the math on that, about 304,000 with the numbers of students that participated, costing us about 162,000. We also pay 56,000 in curriculum for access to the curriculum we're using for that. And then the ultimate teacher costs on top of everything is another 522,000. So it's a little pricey for the numbers we're getting out of it. And not that it's bad, and students are getting good things out of it, but it's fairly costly. So our total e-school costs last year were just over $800,000 for the program we've been running. Looking at SOEP last year, this is, and let me explain what that is, State Online Educational Program. And the bulk of our students use Utah Online School. There are 5 providers our students can choose from. The bulk of them use Utah Online School. When I first started looking into this, I saw a couple of names I recognized, students at Provo High that I'd had at Dixon. And I called a couple of moms and I said, hey, why did your student use UOS SOEP? And they said the convenience of signing up, the connection with the students that online teachers are using, and the content of the curriculum made it easier and more valuable for their students to use this. And these were students I knew well, students, good students who had picked courses that they could have done at Provo High. But hands down, I asked why not use eSchool, and hands down the answer was it's hard, it's cumbersome, it's a little tricky to use, and the curriculum's not very friendly. Now, we as an LEA, a local education authority, can't deny access for original credit to SOEP. Now, looking through the 1.17 million we spent, I didn't know this was a part of my job assignment, and neither did those that had given me the job assignment until about February, was it? Through some transitions that happened in previous administrations, and me coming into this role, we didn't really know who was doing this before, honestly. But every student that applies for SOEP, as of February, I go in and I bring up their transcript and I bring up their course request and I bring up all the courses they've done, and I make sure it fits the state guidelines for up to 6 credits and a certain amount in a year, 2 above what they're doing, and that it's only for original credit. So that 1.17 we spent last year, I don't have a dollar breakdown, but a lot of it was repeat courses, which is not actually part of the SOEP program, or credit recovery, which is not a part of that program as well. It was designed for original credit. But what was happening is it was being automatically approved by the computer after 3 days, 3 business days. So when a request comes in, I get 3 business days to look at it, and right now it's really busy because there's about 800 some odd requests that I've been filtering through from last week of students doing good things. And I've communicated really clearly with our counselors last year and over the summer, please remind students that they will be rejected if it's a repeat course that they've failed, because there's a credit recovery option that the schools run that's a better outcome for that, or if they're trying to do a grade replacement. Now you remember in June-ish, Devin presented a request to you folks to approve a student paying for the option of using UOS for grade replacement. And that was approved by you folks, and that's been used a little bit this last fall. Students are using that when they want to replace a grade. I don't know what the number will be this year. Devin and I are confident it'll be a lot less than 1.1 million, which will save us some good money. And again, we're not trying to say no to students who want to do good things with their credit and what they're doing for early graduation. But we are saying no, if you've taken the course and failed it, there's a credit recovery option that's better. And if you want to do grade replacement, you're going to have to pay for that, because you had a chance, we as taxpayers paid for that, and you as a board approved that first time. Students going to need to own that the second time. So that number is going to change. When I put this together, I had turned down 424 requests, saving us about $63,000. And again, it's not that we want students not to get the credit. We want them to do it in a way that's feasible financially, because this wasn't feasible to us. We spent a lot of money last year when there's better ways to do it. Costs about $315 to $515. It depends on the course for us to pay for a student to use seats, and that's per semester in the half credit course they take.
Can you explain what seats is?
Was there a question?
Can you explain seats? We have a lot
Sure.
of acronyms.
Yes, thank you. There are a lot of acronyms. So SEATS is the program that the state uses for students to enroll in an SOEP. And so when a student wants to enroll in an SOEP course, they log into SEATS, create a login for the first time, and in there they create their login, which ties them to their school and their student number, and then they can go in through the SOEP to request the course. Thanks for asking for the clarification.
And one more while we're on it. Utah Online School, UOS,
Yes.
is an SOEP, right?
They are
Like
one of the 5 providers.
Is SOEP the umbrella, and then there's different
Yeah, so
providers?
the state online education program is the big umbrella,
Okay.
and there are 5 providers with 95% of our students choosing UOS.
Okay, thank you.
We get a handful of requests for the others, but by and large our students choose UOS.
And when one of our students signs up for this course, we as a district pay for the course.
So we don't pay physically, they withhold the WPU from Devon's coffers to pay whichever of the 5 providers.
Per course,
Per
but
course.
not like for the entire student, right?
Not the entire
Right.
WPU, it's a prorated amount of that
Prorated.
course that
Okay,
the
thank
student's
you.
taking. Thanks for clarifying. And some of you have probably had a student use UOS, because I've seen some of your names in approvals in that process. So, and as a little side note, out of curiosity, I had my 11th grader sign up for and take financial lit over the summer through UOS, so I could see as a parent what it looked like. And it was actually really good. The content is good. I'm not advertising for UOS here. I'm just saying I was curious why our students are using it. Have either of you used it?
Oh, sorry. I definitely have. I did it for financial lit and some of the required courses that I couldn't fit in my schedule. And I will say it's really well done. And it's really easy to contact your teachers as well. They're really on top of it.
Yeah, they are. And the content is really solid. They're using approved state core curriculum. And the teachers are really good at connecting to kids in an online fashion. I was actually really impressed. The only downside was he didn't get Kirk, who teaches at Provo High, who's really good at it. And that was the only downside. But he had a really good positive experience taking that course this summer.
I'll just add they also have more variety. So my daughter needed to take 2 classes one summer, and I was like, okay, we got to use the district one, and our district one only had 1 available, so we just did both through Utah Online because it was easier.
They have more variety all overall.
Yeah.
Because they've grown and they can actually offer things we can't. So again, I'm not trying to be an advertisement for UOS. I've just investigated why our students are using it so much. And it was an indicator to me that we needed to look at something. So I reached out to UOS and said, hey, would you be interested in contracting with us? Would you work with us and be the curriculum for our program, and our students would use you instead of our own eSchool program? They offered us a yes on that with a $250 per semester course, which is less than we're paying when we use them through states, because it would be a contract that we would make, through the states program SOEP, because it would be an MOU contract we would use with them. So looking at what that might do, PCSD eSchool awarded 649 credits to our district students in 24 and 25. That same amount would have cost $324,000 under this contract. And remember, we spent about $832,000 to run our eSchool. So just with the numbers alone that we had students using our own program and what we would have paid under this offer from UOS, we would save not quite $500,000, a little over. Elementary, their offer was $2,250 per student. I don't know that we're going to do elementary because I'll leave that to Wendy making a recommendation to you folks. Elementary is a different dynamic for this. There's no credits to earn. It's an offering that we've done for a variety of kind of, again, older reasons that have morphed. My recommendation to Wendy and to you folks would be, we have a retirement pending with our eSchool principal, and my recommendation would be we don't replace that person, that position. I keep the remaining 2 staff that are there to bring on the work we're going to do with Utah Online School for matriculating our students, making it a simpler process. So our students could still, let me clarify what that would look like, and by keeping our registrar and specialist, our students could still go through SOEP if they wanted to. But what we're going to do with UOS is have a simpler, streamlined outcome where in the counselor's office that day they can sign up for UOS and start the course. So you wouldn't have to wait the 3 days that you would normally have to in going through an SOEP and then wait to hear back from UOS. So we would have a streamlined process that would encourage our students. If we do this, we want you to use this program. It's an easier program for you to use. We want you to succeed with this program. And so we would keep those 2 employees, the registrar and the specialist. We would not keep the teachers in the program. We can absorb them. I talked to HR. HR is well aware of this. The positions can be absorbed, and then the extra work that teachers are doing around the district wouldn't be available for them because we wouldn't be paying them to do the extra courses through eSchool. Did you have a question, Wendy?
I had a couple of questions. So one is, if we go this route and I'm a student, do I have a limit on how many courses I can do?
So with SOEP, there is a limit.
Yep.
With this, there would not be,
Okay.
other than there is a limit on how many courses you can take in a year.
Okay.
And how many credits you can get in a year.
Okay, gotcha.
8 is the normal, 8 credits per year, with a variance allowed within our current policy and state policy for a student to do 1 or 2 more for early graduation attempts working with your counselor.
Okay.
Doing more than 10 in a year is tricky anyway. It's a lot.
That would make sense. The second question I have is, do we know how many secondary teachers currently are earning additional money through eSchool that would not be available to them anymore? Do you remember?
It's less than 50, but it's more than 30. I can't remember.
Okay.
35 and change is what comes to mind mentally. I know it's less than 50, but I know it's in the 30s.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This might be a question more for Devin, but how much money, if they take a semester course, is withheld from our WPU? Does it
Again, between
cover the
350 and
250?
550, depending on the course.
Microphone.
They did last year withhold the 1.2 million. So they tell me they're not pulling it from our WPU, but it is a negative amount on our allotment memo, and it's supposed to net against our WPU. So, but it ranges between the 250 and 550 that they charge.
Depending on the course. Yeah. And I don't want you to walk away with the idea that SOP is a bad thing. It's not. It's doing really good things for our students. Our management of it is on us. We weren't managing an element of it that we should have been to prevent retakes or grade replacements, which again, we don't want to say no to students on that. We want them to get it, but there's more effective ways to do that don't cost taxpayer dollars in that process.
And when he talks about the early graduation, if they're marked with an early graduation flag, the state actually provides us with more WPU for that student. So if they're taking a quarter, 2 extra classes for the year, 2 full classes, then we would get a 0.25 more of the WPU, but they have to be identified as an early graduate in order for that to work.
Yeah. Thanks. Other questions? Yes.
So to summarize, if we adopt these recommendations, we'd basically save about $500,000 a year is our estimate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe more, maybe less. I'm comfortable with 500,000 just from pulling last year's numbers in what we spent versus what we anticipate to spend with the contract. What we want students to do is have access to things that's easier for them to sign up for, easier for them to get matriculated in, not waiting for this bouncing back and forth between SOEP and UOS, or the difficulty of our own e-school where it's missing courses or missing offerings.
Okay, Lisa?
I guess I just would like to, you said about 35 teachers. Can you give a ballpark of how much income they won't be able to capture in this way?
It varies by the teacher because it depends on how many kids they have. The minimum is right around 1,500 that someone's making for a year, and there's some that are making about 25,000 extra a year from doing it. But there are possible options too for Utah Online to need more teachers to help on that side. So that is also something that we're looking at.
Yeah. And one of I won't use names in a public setting on camera, but one of the really solid teachers who does a really good job of this is retired and is doing this because that person's really good at it. And so they do it in a retirement situation, connecting with kids and doing a good job. So it will impact those situations. But again, it will mean somebody's going to need more employees on an electronic version as well.
Go ahead, Emily.
Okay, so this would mean that e-school, that like my son just did like Fitness for Life through e-school, that would just go away, right?
Yeah.
Go to your next slide.
Yep. E-school itself, we might rename as something like PCSD Online Services. There's a couple of things we want to include in that. For example, a student can now take the GED and have 13 credits applied back to their high school transcript from the GED. So at Online Services, I'm working with Pearson right now for an approval process to host the GED. Right now, the only place to take that in the Valley is at UVU. And so at Online Services, we would host the GED for both our adult ed and our high school cohort ed students to be able to take that there and apply that back. At our site at Provo Online, we would manage the enrollment, try and simplify that working with our counselors, make it simple for our students. There's also a need to host demonstrated competency testing. As of last year, the state provided demonstrated competency tests that students can use to also get credit for a course. And so this would be an online testing service that we would provide at this location with the 2 employees that we'll keep there. That's kind of what we're thinking in terms of how that would look. Yep.
Okay, another question. So if a student outside our district, can they access this?
No, students outside the district could use SOEP from their own district.
Okay.
This would be for Provo.
Okay.
And that largely started actually at that changing point where we were providing thousands of students statewide. We haven't offered this to outside students for several years.
Gina.
Sorry, we're sharing. The teachers who are currently teaching that would not have that anymore, are they very aware that this is a year-to-year thing? There's not like a promise or anything that this would be ongoing?
So it's always been at will, so to speak. That hasn't changed. Again, the two contracted folks in the elementary, conversations have been had with elementary site, and contracted folks could be absorbed. But the at-will portion of this, the extracurricular piece of it, has never been a guarantee. It's not a negotiated agreement. It's not in that protected category. It will impact lives. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it will impact a part-time job status, basically. And that's real, and we're not aware of what that's going to mean for people.
Thank you, John.
I have one more question. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Emily.
What about homeschooled kids that live in Provo?
Homeschool can access
Would they use this?
both SOEP, and if they dual matriculate, they can access this.
Okay.
It would require dual matriculation, because this would be a part of Provo district. And if they're just homeschooled, many homeschools do dual matriculate.
Right.
And so if they're dual matriculated, yes.
Can I clarify? I think if they're receiving the Utah Fits All Scholarship, though, then they would not access through our district.
That's different.
Okay.
Yeah, that's totally different.
Okay, John, thank you for this
Thank
great
you.
presentation. And then we will kind of, with the board, we're going to talk about budget recommendations, and so this rolls into that conversation on cost savings and things like that. So we'll wait to kind of get a feel from the board on that. And we will turn it over to Wendy to start us off on our budget recommendations. We'll just clarify right now, this is the first conversation. We don't approve the budget until June. It's a starting conversation and putting it all out on the table, and then we'll see where we land with things. But we know we've got public watching. We invite your feedback and participation, but no decisions are being made anytime soon.
Okay, so I'm hoping this, there we go, perfect. What we've done as a district leadership team is we started with a document to just kind of establish our rationale and what our current reality is, and then we'll get into some specific budget discussion pieces with this. I'm not going to go through and read this, but I wanted this on board book for our patrons to just talk about that we are really trying to promote an open dialogue between the board, our district leaders, and our stakeholders as we start looking at our budget overall. We want people to be providing feedback. I love that people send us emails and have strong opinions about things. That's important. That means we're doing a lot of things right when that happens, because it means there are things that they're really passionate about. And we want to have a very transparent and open and candid conversation. This is going to be tough. There is no part of this that is going to be easy. We want to be civil and professional and insightful. We want our principals to be taking this to their faculties, because lots of people are going to have some good ideas about how we can move forward, because when we sit in the district office, we get kind of sometimes tunnel vision about what can happen. So I just want to review mostly for the public what our current reality is, and Devin will step in if I screw any of this up, which is likely. So our current budget to pay for the programs and for our salaries and benefits required, and that was for this year, an additional $4 million over and above what we received from the state and federal governments. So to pay for that, you all went through a truth in taxation process to raise the increment levels of our property tax rates. It was not certified by the Utah State Tax Commission, and so we have to pull that amount out of our fund balance. We recognize that we can't continue to use our fund balance to pay for ongoing expenses. It's important to note that a fund balance can only be used for one-time money. It can't be used for ongoing funds. So we've talked about going through a truth in taxation process, again, to raise some of this revenue. But as Devin has pointed out, we also have this municipal building authority bond to help pay for Timpview, and we do not want to keep burdening our taxpayers. And every time we go to taxpayers, what I hear from people is, what are you cutting out of your budget? Like, I only get to spend what I bring in, so how come you think you get to just, come and find more money somewhere? So here are some other factors that we want to consider. We really do need to cut at least $2 million from our current operating budget. There are some things that that we also are going to ask for, or that through listening tours and different pieces of feedback that I received, we have some asks as well. So we may need to cut actually maybe $4 million out of that budget to deal with some other expenses, so that we can still have that $2 million being overall cut out of our budget. Other factors to consider, our enrollment is expected to drop by about another 300 students. I think the state had a more abysmal amount than we did, which if you're looking at where the WPU is right now, not where it will be funded next year, that's at least 1.5 million that we're going to lose. We also know that that results in a lower number of teachers needed. When you have fewer students, you need fewer teachers. That's a lot easier to address at a high school level in particular, because I can purchase an additional period and divide students out. So you'll have some teachers that teach 7 periods instead of 6 periods. That can lower class sizes across a subject area by 3 or 4 students apiece. If I have a drop at an elementary school of 25 students, that doesn't happen in a single grade level. It happens across the school. So it's going to be 2 here, 3 here, whatever. So then what happens is I can't pull a teacher out of that school, because I'm going to end up with one grade level that's going to have over 30 students, or I'm going to have one grade level that has, 12 students or something like that. So we end up subsidizing those smaller schools by a much larger amount. So we have to recognize that elementary operates a little bit differently. We also know that in our strategic plan, we want to continue to retain our best employees, and that we need to keep marching that, that drum about we've got to keep improving our salaries. And so as Devin and I were talking, we would love to see if we can still do a $2,000 salary increase for our teachers to continue to fund our longevity bonuses, which we can do those out of one-time money, and then create reasonable increases for our other employees. The legislature has told us that we will likely not receive any more than a 4% increase on our budget, which will literally only pay for the increment increases that we currently have to fund, and so that won't entail any salary increases across the district. That'll just help us to keep everybody where they're at. Yes?
Do we know the 2,000 salary increase? How much is that?
Oh, I'm going to
like how many million?
It's on our sheet. We're getting there. 2 million, yeah. We also know that insurance is something that is a top-rated priority for our employees. Last year, our cost of insurance was over, our increased cost was over 30%. We only passed on 11% of that cost to our employees, and the district absorbed the rest of that. We're trying to be really responsible for that. We have put out a request for proposal for insurance to see if we can secure some better options for our employees without those significant cost increases. And then finally, we do want to hear from our stakeholders. I did put your email address in here on purpose so that everyone can email us. I do want people coming to public comment to share ideas. We hope that our teachers will share ideas with their principals, and really help us identify what ideas we have not thought about that we need to examine. We know that we're not going to agree on these decisions, but we want to be transparent as to how we got to these decisions, and why we believe that they align with the specific goals and outcomes of the strategic plan. We are here as district leaders to give you information, and then you're going to tell us what you're prioritizing, and we will try to make some recommendations and provide options for you, and then you can sort through that and figure out what you think will be in the best interest of our district. So with that, I want to switch over to, I like to call it a budget brainstorm. And before I start talking about some of the areas that are just costs that we have that we want to consider, I do want to talk about some of these other needs. So I saw Meg's eyes get really big when I said we need to cut $2 million out, but I really need to cut $4 million out so that I can help to support some of these things. So I just want to talk about some of these things, and in your mind, you're going to start thinking about which of these things are priorities for you. And then as you're asking questions, my team back here is taking copious notes, or they better be taking copious notes, I can't see them, so that as you ask for that additional information, then at each board meeting, we can provide that. So if you're like, well, how many teachers are getting paid through eSchool, and what is that average salary or something like that, we can pull, I don't know those numbers off the top, but it will give us time to do that. So the amount that increasing teacher salaries at a $2,000 minimum would be almost 2.1 million. So it gives you that number there. We've tried to lay out some advantages and some concerns, as well as maybe some additional notes. We're really just trying to overload you with information. So have fun with that. So, and I know many of you read this very thoroughly, and others of you, it's like, I'm going to read over the stuff that I care about the most. I totally get all of that. One of the things that keeps coming up in listening tours is, one is the effectiveness of letters and the science of reading and supporting our students with literacy, but our teachers talk about that they need reasonable class sizes to do this. So I asked Devin to pull an amount, because right now, yeah.
Just for clarity, where are we compared to our neighbors in salary? Are we $2,000 below?
We're 2,000. So last year we were last year we were $4,000 lower, and not jumping it all in one year so that we didn't bust our budget. We did half one year, and then we wanted to do the other half the next year. So right now we're about 2,000 less than our neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
I think when we were looking at Alpine's schedule today, we're pretty close. We're almost right with them. So it depends on a couple of the districts, but I think, are we right over 60 or 61? Just over 60, and I think the base salary in Alpine is just under 60. But if you're an elementary teacher in Alpine, you actually make more money than a secondary teacher does, which I think is interesting. I'll be a conversation for a different day. But it's based on how many hours you're actually spending teaching students, not your hours of your contract. So we're really close. So in our listening tours, our elementary teachers are telling me I need smaller classes, which I 100% agree, because if you've been in a first grade classroom, you understand this. We currently are funding at 1 to 27.5. That's what the state gives us. They have asked for a 24-to-1 ratio for kindergarten, first and second grade. That would be at that cost of $1.6 million. It's important to note as well that the governor's budget is containing a portion in it that would be kind of a block grant, where based on the numbers of kindergarten, first and second grade classes that you have, you could get that many instructional aides, because they believe that you could do more small group instruction if every teacher had access to an instructional aid. We don't know if that will get approved at this point, so we need to watch that to see if that can also help with our elementary schools. It really does align with the governor's priority in literacy and also with our own priorities. Right now, with insurance costs are unknown. We don't know what those costs are going to be, but we do know that it is a priority for our employees to not shove all of those costs right back onto the employee. Please.
When do we expect to know those costs?
End of January.
Ooh, I love that Devin has all the answers and I can just hand her the microphone. It's very exciting. We also know that the state was supposed to help us cover the money that we lost in being able to gather school fees. They are coming in here in January to capture $369,000, just swipe that right out of our budget, and they're going to take that again next year as well. So we need to account for that to figure out, because they're reappropriating it to the Catalyst centers. Yeah.
Will you just say that again? I just want people to understand, because this is really challenging. We've already passed a budget.
Yep.
And now this is not a small amount of money. So can you just reiterate
Yeah,
what's happened there?
and Devin's going to help. I'm going to let Devin.
So,
17 million statewide.
Yep, 34 million over the 3-year period. So this is in relation to the school fees bill that passed last year, where we were no longer allowed to charge a general fee, and they didn't allow us to charge the core class any fees for core classes. So that was for our district. It was around 650,000 overall that we lost. The state provided a percentage of that, about $369,000 this year. It was going to be just over 200 the next year, and about 150 the final year. What they decided was they needed more money for their catalyst centers, so they were going to just pull back the money they'd already sent us for this year, the $369,000, and just have the schools find the money on their own.
And there's some rule that allows them to do that. I can't remember what it is, but somebody told me what it was, and I looked it up, and it actually is legitimate.
So basically, they broke their promise.
Ooh, I like that you said that.
Yeah, I'm a little feisty about this one.
Yeah.
Not frustrated.
The other thing that has come up quite a bit that we have been working with the association on since how long, Jason? Since like June, July, something like that. Was part of the piece of us breaking the salary between their base contract and then what is known as the educator salary adjustment piece, and we separated out those amounts because the educator salary adjustment piece is funded on a year-to-year basis. We never know if that money is coming in. So when we set the per diem rate, and what I mean by that is for those employees that work additional days, or for an employee who teaches an additional period, we set that on their base contract. So what they saw was that their hourly rate went down. So even though their overall salary, their total went up, what they're feeling like is, okay, I have an extra 20 days on my contract, but I'm earning less money per day this year than I did last year because this per diem rate is now based on my base contract. So if we were to go in and list their per diem rate in the same way that we list their salary, so it's base contract plus the educator salary adjustment, that way if the legislature pulls that money, they know that that's not guaranteed salary, but it would preserve that hourly rate so it is part of a portion of their whole salary. That would cost us $400,000. And part of this too is to help the association understand they're also going to have to work with their members to make some recommendations. Is the 1.6 million more important for class size reduction? Is this 2.1 million that goes to all teachers more important, or is the 400,000 in per diem, is all of that really important? And if it is, then what cuts are we going to make on the other end for that? And I know that this number seems very, very large, but as we look at special education and just the needs that we have across the district, over the last few years that I've been here, we've been spending generally a little over $1 million more than what the state and federal government is allotting us to meet the needs of our students. I think this year, Devin, you said that number has now reached closer to 1.5 million. To give you an example, sometimes what happens is like we'll have a student who has severe behaviors and whatnot, and we've got to hire a teacher, and it's almost a one-to-one situation, and now all of a sudden I have an additional FTE. We don't have the option of not providing the services. We have to do what the student needs. So as we've been working as a district leadership team, we feel like if we could do $1 million additional over that, it would give us the flexibility. Our special ed team is feeling, how shall I say, very, very overwhelmed. The numbers of their specialists that are out in schools trying to help support teachers with extreme behaviors, and they're even being called in to help with general education classroom situations, they're just feeling really stretched. And I get worried that not only am I going to lose those specialists that are these behavior experts, but that I'm also going to start losing special education teachers because they can't get the supports that they need as quickly as they need. So we do know that that is a big ask. But we felt like it was something important to put on this list. We have talked about that we have 2 assistant principals, for example, at Franklin Elementary. It is a school in comprehensive school improvement. Timpanogos is actually as at risk and is one of our largest schools. We currently have a Title I coordinator there. We have talked about changing that position to a full assistant principal, because when you're an assistant principal, you can support with IEPs, you can support with 504s, you can actually support with discipline and behavior. A Title I coordinator cannot do that by just the definition of what their certification is in. So that would increase that cost of that position by approximately $60,000. We have talked about that we don't like School Messenger because it is a very frustrating program, and do we need to get a more robust communication system that can translate into all of our languages? To do that would cost about $50,000. I think right now we're paying about $15,000 for School Messenger, about $25,000. So I can adjust that so it'd be an increased cost of about $25,000. Please.
So is School Messenger used to email all the parents?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Great question. We have also had a desire to have a really expert behavior team. We have PBIS coaches and people that go in to support, but part of the issue is those individuals can help to work with small groups of students. Really, we need some behavior experts who can go in and support the teacher and train the teacher in how to help with those behaviors and train the principal in how they're going to support with those behaviors. Because it is something where we need to build the capacity. And so we have been talking about having up to 3 FTE that would specifically support K through 8 just in behavior. Behavior is something that comes up at every single listening tour that I go to. We have spent basically an additional $50,000 outside of additional grant money that we've had for professional development to train our BLTs. As part of our PLC process. We want to make sure that that's built into the budget, because every time I need to do something, I go to Devin and I'm like, Devin, can you find me some money? And I'm really tired of asking her that. So I want it built into the budget if that's the direction that we're going to go. Oh, yes, it's not a sandwich. It's a building leadership team that's made up of teachers on different grade levels as well as department levels, and they're really a decision-making body for the school and analyze data and determine what needs to be done for the school to achieve its school improvement plan goals. We have added CAS. If we end up going with a single site for CAS and this board decides to do transportation, we wanted that cost put in there. We do have a requirement in legislation that we do have to set up a peer court system. Currently, the police department is running that, and they've basically come and said, this isn't our job to run. You are supposed to be running this. I actually don't think this is an ask that we need, because I do think we have current personnel that we can assign this to. I just want it on people's radar that sometimes we get these things from the legislature, like, oh, by the way, you have to do this, and there's no additional money that comes with that. And then note that we also are supposed to have fully certified PE teachers at the elementary level, or our elementary teachers have to provide the PE instruction at least 30 minutes a week. The way that other districts have done this is that they have increased the base salary for elementary teachers. So if we were to do that and you took all of our elementary teachers, that could be a cost as high as $1.2 million.
What's the cost alternatively? Is that the cost of adjusting salaries of our current teachers or of adding a certified PE teacher?
That would be the high end of adding that to our teachers currently. You'll notice here that one of the things that I get concerned about is then we're asking them to pull that 30 minutes either out of prep time, which I don't want to do, or it's coming out of literacy and math instruction. And so what does that look like?
So is it 1 FTE per elementary school then, as an alternative to that, what you're describing, in terms of having a licensed?
Great question. It would be about a half per school. So it'd be like 6.25 FTE. Tell me the math on that, Devin. 6.5 FTE would be 660, like almost 700,000. Wow, that's Devin. She's made me a math person. So we could go as low as 700,000.
Okay. Is PE required in elementary
Yes,
school?
it is.
Okay.
Great question. We have been using instructional assistants for that, and we've received feedback that we are not in compliance with state board requirements. Okay, now let's go to some possible things that we have tried to look at where maybe we could streamline some of our expenditures. So the restructuring of East School we've talked about. I will just say I'm not going to give you a lot of recommendations on things today because I really want I really just want you to, how I hold it, oh it is, okay. I really want you to be able to ask the questions and to start getting information from constituents and talking with teachers and principals. But with eSchool, it feels like a no-brainer to us. It feels like we can provide the same services to our students. We can save about $500,000. And if you choose to, we can add elementary. If we feel like that's important and we want to make that an option, we can contract with Utah Online for an elementary student. That elementary student still has the right to go to Utah Online as a student, and Utah Online will gather WPU for that student. So they don't have to go through us to have access to it. So it isn't like it's either us or nothing. I just want you to be aware of that. I also love the idea that we could become a GED testing site, and I love the idea that we could have a testing site for competency-based. I think our two young ladies here could probably have passed a competency-based test in health pretty easily, or, you know, there are lots of things that then free up more time in your schedule, and that is a requirement by state law that we have that in place in our district. So what we would do with eSchool is if you give us the go-ahead to move forward with that and give us some direction, we can start moving on that now to have conversations with individuals. And then if you felt like you needed a formal vote for that, we could add that to a later agenda. If you felt like you still wanted to ask some more questions, that will be up to board leadership to determine that. But that is something we feel pretty strongly about.
But would this start for next
school year? Yes. Great question.
When would you need an official, like, yes, we're okay with that or not?
By the February board meeting, first February board meeting.
Thank you.
Because we have to start placing that. We have 1.5 elementary teachers that we would need to place if they wanted to be placed in a brick and mortar school. We have also, with some of those district positions, we're moving an administrative assistant over into student services and not replacing that individual. Devin has restructured business and finance department. We're not replacing Clint Smith at eSchool, so right now we're sitting at a savings of $300,000. And we have put in place a hiring freeze for all district positions that those have to come through cabinet for approval. We want to demonstrate, we hear a lot, oh, our district office is bloated, or what does that person do all day long, or all of those kinds of things. So we just want to be very mindful of that. We're already in the process of restructuring our school nurses. Devin has started to put together a sample salary schedule for them to pull them from the county into our district offices. I believe we got a meeting set up with our lead nurse. We'll go over that benefit package, then take it to the full school nurses, and then bring it to you, and then you will choose if that's the direction you would like to go. It is important to note that all of the other school districts are severing their ties with Utah County Board of Health. There will be no school districts now in the state of Utah that have that relationship with a county board of health from here on out.
Okay, that was just my question. So they are all severing it as we're speaking right now,
yes,
too. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe you should let the new superintendents for Alpine know this, because
I think Rob
they
is.
get hired.
I think Rob is known. I think Rob knows that. So, and I'm sure he'll.
Gonna tell them.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think their contract's going to be in place for Alpine before those 3 districts are formed, and since it's starting this year, it's already in place for Alpine and then gets absorbed over to the other school districts. So.
Wendy, can I ask really quickly? And maybe the answers we don't need to answer here, but like who will oversee our nurses within the district?
Heather Chatwin will. She'll be the lead nurse.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then like protocols and processes, like who will Heather be outlining those? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And we found out too, the way the state code is written, we had originally been told that we have to have a doctor on contract to write the orders for the nurses, and we actually don't. A parent's physician can serve as that order. So we're working through all of those specific details. And Heather has been awesome. I think she's incredible. She's tried to stay super positive and really wants to make things work as best we can. I know y'all love talking about Camp Big Springs. And so Camp Big Springs is on here as a cost, and we put that it serves about 500 fifth graders. I can honestly tell you that we don't have any data that shows that Camp Big Springs results in higher science performance or those kinds of things. But it is a program that does have a lot of emotion tied to it. And sometimes we do have to acknowledge that emotion drives some decisions. It sometimes does. We have concerns about how it pulls some of our current employees off of their regular assignments, particularly in tech and maintenance. We have safety and liability concerns, but it is part of a long-going tradition here in Provo City School District.
My question about that, with our salaried employees, they would just move on to other assignments. They'd be getting the same amount of money, correct? So does this 350 reflect that that's not an adjustment for them?
So that's correct. And the 350 is including what is costing to rebuild platforms, to provide supplies, and to pay for the administrator, the co-administrator, and we now have an administrator from the schools on site up there in case there are issues that happen, also paying for the nurse that is up there, and the teachers, yep. In our parent advisory committee, they had talked about the space labs at the elementary schools, that they felt like that was something that was that they would prefer to see money used in other STEM areas. I don't feel like we're expending a lot of money, but that was some feedback that they felt like that should be placed on this list. We've talked about, in light of technology, reducing our Chromebook ratios at our elementary and middle schools to a 1-to-2 ratio. I don't even know if that's really possible at the middle school level. At the elementary level, there are a couple of concerns that are coming through in that there are individuals that want a tech-free environment for our elementary students, but nobody's realizing that all of our curriculum is online. And so we have to have we don't even have the ability to buy paper copies of updated curriculum at this point. So I think when we were talking with one of our representatives, she stated that she was putting language into the bill that would allow for it if it was tied directly to the standards and to the curriculum, but that we had to kind of put this is the amount of time that would be there, and parents can monitor that very closely.
The 200,000 is just elementary school. That's the amount. That's just because the separating of the 1-to-1 at middle school would be way too complicated.
After school programs, this is really, we have 2 employees that, so we have Charity, who oversees our grants and helps us with school safety. She does pretty much anything and everything we ask her to do. But she also has 2 employees that I believe are full-time. Is that correct, Jason? They're full-time employees that have been helping with after-school programs, and as that funding has gone away, that's a lot of money that we're spending on 2 employees for not a lot that's taking place there. We've talked about saving some money by not having our high school students in particular turn in Chromebooks at the end of the school year. We can actually update those remotely and have them keep those Chromebooks over the summer. So they get the Chromebook in 9th grade and they actually just keep that Chromebook through their entire high school career. That is what most districts do with the high school students because they're also working on sometimes things over the summer and can be helpful to them. I don't know that that would be a good situation for middle school because we already do have parents that do not want their kids to have access to those Chromebooks over the summer. So we've already listed some questions that we have about some of those pieces there.
Here's a question about
Yeah.
tech. Maybe the tech guys can answer this. Chad's. Hey, Chad. Can they be locked down during the summer? Oh.
So the question was, can we lock them down and can we set timelines on them? Yes, we can do all of those things.
Because I will add to that, even high school parents, their happiest day of the school year is when they turn the Chromebooks in and they don't have to fight the fight with the kids with
Excellent.
being on their Chromebooks all the time, right? So
I do have to say, though, that by turning in the Chromebooks at the end of the year, that there's still usually a whole week left of school.
That's exactly
and
right.
It's causing problems at the end of the school year.
Yep, it does. We have talked about Avid. We have made a significant investment in Avid over the years at our secondary schools. We actually spend approximately $500,000 on Avid between the membership fees, the additional FTE that we provide to the schools to help provide the Avid electives, to provide for the Avid coordinators, and then the travel that goes in because they go to summer institutes. We were thinking about reducing that amount, and then secondary schools could choose whether or not they wanted to continue to provide the Avid elective, what that might look like. We could, like last year, we spent quite a bit of money on professional development for Avid. We have a lot of people trained in Avid. Do we just use our in-house people and then just pay for the membership into Avid? There are some creative ways in which we can do that. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing kind of thing, but we felt like it would be safe to say we could save up to about $335,000 with some restructuring there. Please. Yeah, what other questions do you have there?
Maybe you should explain what Avid is for people who don't know and is watching.
Avid is a program that is designed to support students in obtaining rigorous post-secondary outcomes who aren't your traditionally really high top performing students. So they're really targeting kids between a 2.0 and a 3.5 GPA is what it should target.
I would just love to see the breakdown of the numbers a little bit more. Like, as I'm thinking about it, I have ideas of
good.
like, this is what I would think I would want to keep and what we could, but how much are each of those really?
Great.
Right. Anybody have anything else? Okay. And I have one question, if we can go back real fast
Yeah.
to the Chromebooks. And maybe this is for Chad. How does keeping them save us $150,000? Do we hire people just for the summer? Because I know a lot of people are employees.
There's a lot of summer work, and then our employees at the schools also get a bit of overtime from it.
So
yes,
it is
but
extra
most of it is
pay going
it's
out.
extra pay going out.
Okay, Melanie?
One thing that I just thought about was with the Chromebooks, if students move during the summer, would that just be a loss to the?
It usually is, yes.
And about how many students would that be?
That would be a good question. Write that question down. That's a good question.
So one of the options on that is to charge a technology deposit in 9th grade that we hold in an account that when they graduate, if they return it, we give them the money back. or they don't return it, they keep it, and we keep the deposit so that we can buy new Chromebooks with that. That's something that is allowable with the state.
I had a parent ask me about this because their prior school had a technology deposit, but they waived it because they didn't use the Chromebook. But we could find that problematic, right, if we have students on different platforms, or no? There's no problem. If someone were to say, I don't want to pay a deposit or check that Chromebook out, I'll provide my child with a computer, that could get messy. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up as something someone mentioned to me.
There are actually districts that don't allow students to bring in their own devices because it gets so tricky to monitor them. Because if I bring in my own device,
Yes.
I can use my cell phone to bypass all of the filters and I can be on whatever I want to be on. So I think at that point we would need to look at a policy of, do we even allow students to bring their own devices in?
And then my next question is, so the work that's being done over the summer, are we saying we can do that work without collecting the Chromebook? I feel like that would still take employees and their time, right? But so where's the real savings coming from? Because aren't you still
So right now
updating
they're
those computers?
taking the Chromebooks and they update each one individually. Right. They clean them. Then it also includes preparing them to give them back to students at the end of the summer. There will still be costs for summer technology work, but it's not nearly as much. They wouldn't need as many of the temporary workers that they bring in for the summer.
Okay. Next, we have an equity model where we reserve 13 FTE that we give out to our most at-risk schools based on low income, all of those different pieces. We've talked about just reducing that from 13 to 10. And then really being very strategic about how that is allotted, not necessarily just kicking it into a formula, but really having cabinet examine what that looks like. The next one has some real downsides. As we get elementary schools that are getting really small, we may end up with a situation where we can't have 2 classes per grade level. And so if we move, I don't want to say, okay, we have 18 students, we're going to have 2 classes of 9. So we could move that to 1 class. However, that really blows up the collaboration process. It really does isolate that teacher. And so what I did put in the notes there is, if we're starting to move in that direction, that to me starts to signal we need to start looking at boundaries across the board. Do we need to look at closing a school? Those types of things.
That's a good question about that.
Yeah.
So as I'm thinking about that at our DLI schools, we have a guarantee that there will be 2 classes in the language portion, but we don't guarantee 2 classes in the English portion. So I would be curious to see what costs we might save if we didn't guarantee those 2 classes, but rather said, if enrollment is under X number in this grade, there's 1 Spanish class, just like there is 1 English class, because we're not actually giving them less opportunities than the English only strand has anyway at that school. Does that make sense? So we lose that guarantee of 2 language classes, and we just base it on the number of students in that class.
You have to have the 2 teacher model, or you're not following the state model. And then you would have to have that teacher in that language has to be proficient in that language and English. Because the 2 teacher is, I have an English side and I have a language side. Now, I do think there are some opportunities where you could start to say, do I not have enough, so this side needs to be a split class, 2nd and 3rd, and then you could do it that way, the language side, or you could say the language side is individual, but the English side is combined on that. We have talked about being a little more creative in that way. It does move us a little bit away from the state model, but I'm less concerned because I don't feel like we get a lot of money from the state. $95,000 a year. It does provide us with the endorsement for those teachers, which is a big deal.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know.
We've talked about, we have our district 6th grade orchestra band teachers that go around and provide band and orchestra to all of our elementary schools. If we decided to just move that and students start band and orchestra in 7th grade, that is an option, and that's about how much that generates. Currently, our high school student to teacher ratio is 28.5 to 1. We could increase that to 29 to 1 and recoup 605,000. And then in many of our schools, what we have happening is we have a BTS teacher that is paid for out of our BTS grant, our Beverly Taylor Sorensen grant. And that can be a drama teacher, that can be a visual arts teacher, and then we also have a Kodai music teacher. And so our students are getting quite a bit of exposure to arts, which is something our parents and our community really cares about. We could use that BTS money and then tell principals, you choose what art you're going to have. That is what they do in most districts. And then that community chooses whether they want visual arts, whether they want music. So then if you chose to keep your Kodai music teacher, then you would use the BTS money to fund that, rather than right now we're actually using class size reduction money to pay for those Kodai teachers. So if we did that, that would be at a savings of 635,000. That is definitely, just want you to understand, there is tremendous support and is a highly unpopular decision for many. In talking with Nate Edvelson, our caseloads for high school special education teachers are pretty low. He believes that he could reduce our teaching staff at the high school level by 2 FTE. That then goes towards that $1 million that I'm asking for that increase. So just understand that some of these can offset the expenses that are showing up on the other list. Some people have suggested, are there social workers needed at every school? Do we need 2 at every school? What does that look like? Just recognizing that a social worker costs about $125,000. We know that they are very highly valued at the elementary. I don't hear that as much at the high school level, but I don't know. And so that hasn't been a question I've asked specifically. Our BYU and UVU partnerships cost us $200,000. It does provide us a pipeline of interns. One of the questions that I had about this was how many of our interns do we actually end up hiring each year that then we're not retraining, because that onboarding cost is reduced, so that can be helpful. We currently spend about $400,000 just on district and school-based travel, so we talked about reducing that by $100,000, recognizing that actually a majority of that money is being spent to support athletics and extracurricular activities to send principals and coaches and those pieces that comes out of that amount. And there's a whole bunch of other positions. We have parent and family advocates, we have PBIS coaches, we have CTE positions. Thinking about what those could look like, we could go to each department and talk through that. We have district specialist positions in our teaching and learning, in our continuous school improvement and student services, and because those are licensed, those are at $110,000. Right now, we're leaving CAS as is, so I don't see that $165,000 being on the table, and our DLI we're leaving as is, so that $1.3 million isn't really much on the table. We have had, go ahead, did you have a question about it? Oh, sorry, Meg.
Sorry, just about CAS. So, and I think it refers actually to the district specialist, because if we do go to the model, one district model, one site model, and then trying to do a pilot of pushing it into the schools, weren't we going to need to hire a GE?
You are, but I'm going to get rid of another district specialist in place of that, so it will be a net gain of 0. Great question.
Principal Hansen asked me yesterday, are you going to make a decision yet? And I said,
we're working. It's the next board meeting. It's coming.
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just mentioned I need to be hiring teachers soon, so make a decision quicker.
Yeah. Well, that's you to make the decision. You gave us the direction to identify a site. You want to go to a single site. So we're working in that direction, but we can't get rid of the current students that are in there. So there's not going to be a heck of a lot of change when it comes to those pieces of it. So I hope that Principal Hanson would reach out to Jared too with questions. So we've had individuals say you should get rid of all of your assistant principals at the elementary except for 3 of our schools, and reduce it at the secondary level by 4. Recognizing that those positions, then we have to guarantee those spots to them as teachers, and they're still guaranteed that admin pay because it wasn't job actionable, it was a risk position that happens. So that only reduces it over time with attrition. So we could start to identify schools like, as this person moves, we're not going to fill an assistant principal position. We could certainly do something like that. So we have some flexibility there. And then I put the more extreme ones towards the bottom. Changing and streamlining all elementary boundaries. That would be something that's not going to impact next year's budget. That would be a huge process, right? Or if you're going to close an elementary school.
Didn't we just have that process?
So you didn't
looking at those numbers?
Yes, you looked at those numbers, but that was before we had a decline in our enrollment of another 300 students. And I'm looking at a Franklin Elementary that's going to drop below 300 students. So.
I think helping myself and the public in context of just having done this study, right? I think this idea, it was supposed to also forecast enrollment. And I think these new numbers are a different number than we forecasted. I'm understanding that as outside of, we can look at population numbers, but we can't look at what choices families are going to make. They may choose homeschool, charter schools, private schools. Is that correct?
I think the other piece that we need to recognize is that overall in the state, the total number of students that are enrolling in public schools has gone down by almost 11,000 students. And that what's happening is 3,200 of those are choosing to go into charter schools. I don't think that's something that we always recognize, and that we have 2 new charter schools that are opening within our boundaries next fall. So that's because those have already gone into a lottery process. That would be my guess as to where some of those elementary students are landing. In addition to that, the Utah Fits All, I don't think because it's a national company, I don't know that they understand the impact of that they came back and funded the vouchers. And so we have 14,000 students statewide that are utilizing that, and even more in the coming year.
And is there more data we can get from the families that are choosing charter schools and homeschools around the reasons behind those choices? Like, how can that inform our practice, I guess, is something that every time I look at our consent calendar and those homeschool reports, for example, I wish we could hear from them and see, kind of what were the levers in that choice. And if some of those can inform our practices in ways, I think that would be wise of us.
I think I think we'll have a hard time finding where all of those individuals are, but that doesn't mean it's not worth the effort to find it. Even if it is, hey, would you come in and talk with us in a focus group and just talk with us about what the experiences you've been having? Any type of information like that would be super helpful, because we're making a lot of assumptions about why they're choosing that. All right, what other questions do you have, and what other information do you want my team's going to start writing down?
Okay.
As they already have.
If we were to do all these cuts, just besides the big ones at the bottom that don't have a number, what's this number at?
I believe it's like at 6.5 million.
This is 6.5 million?
Your suggested things is about 6 million, right? Of addition,
I
I added up as about 6, I think, roughly.
Yeah, there's a couple on there that we don't need because they're ones that we can postpone. I was thinking that the numbers were 6 and 4, so I need to go. But I added some more in there, so it's almost a wash. So we still have to find $2 million. So I didn't really help you.
Okay.
That's what you wanted to know: is can I do all of this and all of this? No.
No. The other question I have for you is, it would be helpful for us to understand how much TSSA money and trust lands money each school has, so that we see like what their budgets are as we're considering things that might have to go back to the schools.
Great question. We can do that.
Well,
and along those lines, I think I would want to know what increase they're going to get this next year in the, if there's a way to predict that, because in a way, they've already allocated their priorities for how they've been using it before, but if they had additional money, that maybe they could make choices with.
We actually did receive the allocations for trust lands for schools next year, and it is significantly higher for the schools, so around a 15% increase.
But TSSA is frozen.
TSSA is frozen. They did get rid of the growth amount of the for the levy last year in the legislative session.
Other questions? Students, do you have any questions? I want you to be thinking between now and next board meeting as you look at this list, like what kinds of things are really important to you as students, because we need to hear from you too. Okay, that's your assignment.
All right, and if anyone thinks of more questions after we leave this discussion, yes, send them on. Send it through email and we'll get those added to the list.
You as board members actually have commenting ability on here. You can just put the questions directly on the link that I sent you in the email, and that would probably be the easiest.
Even better.
I was really grateful that Superintendent Dow presented this to our Parent Advisory Committee. Will our Community Council, did I get the wrong words?
Yes.
Also, Community Connections Committee also received this presentation, and then I would also just say anyone who goes to maybe our neighborhood district meetings, just mention that we're having this conversation and where they can access the things we're looking at, and so that we hear from as many people. And then I guess our teachers will all be aware that these conversations are happening, and school admin, so we can hear from them as well. I think the more we hear from people, the better in this. Yeah.
I put it in the video cast. I will be sending an email as soon as Bonnie has the timestamp. I will send the documents to all personnel across the district with the timestamp of where they can come in and listen to this conversation. Our principals are spending they don't know this yet, but they're spending 2 hours next Thursday with Daryl and Jared going over this list to start identifying some of the priorities that they have as well, and some of the things they want to talk with their building leadership teams about.
All right. We will have to end this meeting a little early tonight to rearrange the room to be ready for business meeting. But Devin, do you think we can do the next item in about 5 minutes? Absolutely. Okay, we're going to move on to item 12, discussion of a small land parcel by Timpview High School.
So microphone. It is actually on, maybe not.
It's not on board doc.
So can I project? We'll go that way.
Oh, maybe. That's funny. My bad. I thought it was maybe not. Okay, there we go. Sorry.
Well, maybe. Here.
Oh, I can hold this.
There we go.
So this is the property we've been talking about that's back behind the Timpview baseball field. And you can see it outlined here on the Google map. And then if you look at the parcel map, it's this blue section. So this section here was the area that used to belong to the city, and this here belongs to the school district. We've had so there's some issues with this property here. There's some broken fences, some poor landscaping. Our poor grounds people can't get to all of our schools on a regular basis, let alone to the areas that are not being used as a district. So this is an area that has been identified and requested that a family be able to buy that to add it on to their property that they have. So the suggestion tonight is to authorize the surplus and the sale of that 7 acres of land, pending an offer. And so we have not received an offer. The lawyer is working on it. He has asked if he can buy it. We're working on the offer. I just wanted to make sure that we had it in the works. But this is the one we talked about. The homeowner has agreed to allow for the easement for the path. That was the one question that was asked. There wasn't a lot of concern addressed, but he has offered to make sure that there's an easement there for that existing path.
I have a question about the process. Do we have to surplus one time and then wait a certain amount of time before we can
We
sell
do
it?
not.
Okay. Why not?
So there's 2 different qualifying spots for school land. So if you live, and I can't remember the exact amount, but if you live in a community, in a single city where your population density is higher, then you have to provide this land to other government entities, other entities. We do not live in a community of that density, so we do not have to do that. And the other thing with this one is the city just sold the other piece of the land, so I know that the city is not interested in that section. So it is not required for us to go through a public comment or any of that. If we decide to surplus property, we can drag this out longer, but we are not required to.
Just one more question about the easement. Will that be in writing? So that,
yes, it will be part of the sale. Yes. I've already asked for that to be part of any kind of documentation.
So this will be on our business meeting to vote on this tonight. Does anyone have any more questions right now about it? Okay. Thank you, Devin.
The next item on the agenda, if you want to go there, I can tell you there's nothing. So we can skip
No
that.
large purchase requests.
There are no large purchase requests. They did not come in. So
not come in. Okay. Wonderful. Open and closed. We are done with our large purchase request portion. Okay, so we will save our policy reviews for our business meeting. And I invite you to, and we'll save our questions about the consent calendar as well for when we get to that portion on the business meeting. Invite you to look at the upcoming board calendar. Does anyone have any questions on that? All right. And do we have a motion to adjourn our study session?
Move that we adjourn our study session.
Okay, motion by Board Member Boyce. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Hall. We are adjourned and we'll begin our business meeting in this room at 7 o'clock.